if we are talking of innovation in a way, then perhaps Polycap is an innovation, and we as Indian, as Dr. Bhatia has said, should be proud of the fact that another Indian, Salim Yusuf, thought of this molecule way back in 2002. And this present talk is an endeavor to highlight the issue of treating a person, a patient, with all the risk profile that he may be harboring, and treating him fully to the extent that all his risk factors are taken care of, and we are not concentrated on a single aspect of his disease, so that we can treat him and we can completely cure him. The cure is the word, not treating is the word. So we can cure him of his disease. That is the motive behind this talk, and that is the motive behind discovery of Polycap. So I don't think that we need to discuss about the cardiovascular disease and its epidemic. All of us are aware that cardiovascular disease is the #1 cause of death globally, whether in men or women. Most people die due to cardiovascular disease, and it's rampant, especially in third world countries and in countries like India, which are developing fast. And it is going to affect almost half of us in our lifetime. So it's a disease that has taken almost every citizen, every person on the earth. So can a drug stop this epidemic? Can innovation that we are talking about can stop this epidemic? That is what we are going to discuss. Now, before we talk, let's seek the problems at hand. All of us know that if somebody has disease, somebody has suffered a myocardial infarction or a stroke, or is having a lot of risk factors, then he must be given drugs. There is no debate on this issue. There is a consensus on this issue that anybody who has many high risk factors, anybody who comes to a clinic with high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol elevated, is a smoker, obese, then he needs to be treated. There is no doubt about this fact. And this we take pride that we do this to all our patients who walk into our clinics. But the problem is that not everybody who has this problem is prescribed a drug. Believe me or not, even in England, even in Europe, 60 to 70% of patients post-MI are only given ACE inhibitors and statin. Post-MI we are talking about. So not everyone is given a drug, and once it has been given to a patient, not every patient takes it. Now the adherence rate falls to as low as 10% to 25% in developing countries, and almost 50% in countries like USA. So everybody is not given drug. Everybody who is given drug is not taking the drug, and many people have side effects. Patient might be taking the drug, but he develops side effects and he stops it. And then in a country like India, cost is a factor. Basic drugs, statin, ramipril, aspirin, these drugs may cost almost half of the wages of a person in India who's working for his day-to-day living. So cost is a big factor. So not every person is we are able to treat because of this. Also, we do not know which people are at risk. We may say that some people do not have. Some patient who has come to us doesn't have high blood pressure. He is not obese, but we are not sure of the risk that he may be harboring. And if we know the risk, we do not know how to stratify the risk. There are so many scores going on. Framingham Health Score. Now recently there is a score that has come up where NCEP guidelines have given a score. So we do not know that what kind of stratification we are going to do for the patient. And suppose we have a wonder pill, suppose we have a wonder bullet, then would it not be pushing our patients to adopt unhealthy lifestyles? In Africa, they tested for an AIDS vaccine, and many young individuals, they became victim of AIDS because once they were given the vaccine, they thought that they are immune to AIDS and indulge in all kind of activities that actually cause the disease. So if we have a magic bullet where we see that you take this medicine and you can have as many burgers and pizzas, probably people might adopt an unhealthy lifestyle. Now let's take this that 90% of all heart attacks and strokes occur in people who are 55 years or over. Many of the people who are sitting here must be 55 years or over. So 90% of the heart attacks or strokes are happening in patients who are more than 55 years of age. Now you may be knowing all the risk factors. So 9 or 10 of these risk factors, they explain 90% of the cardiovascular disease globally. The morbidity is explained by 9 or 10 of the risk factors. Inter-heart study that was done few years back, it said that 90% of the myocardial infarction in men and 94% of the myocardial infarction in women had 9 risk factors. They had some or other of these 9 risk factors. 71% of the deaths in India will be in 2020 would be due to CAD, 75% due to stroke, and 70% due to diabetes. So this is a global epidemic, and the risk factors are well known. They are going to affect most of us in our lifetime, and as we age is a factor that is non-modifiable. Most of us might be going to have the risk factors which cause this disease. So this is the outline for which we are going to discuss this talk, and we are going to take one by one. Cardiovascular, we talked about this, that is the major cause of morbidity and mortality across the globe. 30% of global deaths in 2010 were due to cardiovascular disease, and number of productive life years of loss, that in India is going to increase by 95% in 2030. So cardiovascular disease affects people who are about 35 to 65 years of age. This is the time when somebody has the most productive years of his life, where he contributes to his own self, to his family, to the community, to the nation. And if somebody gets a heart attack at this age, obviously the country is going to suffer, and this loss is going to almost going to be 100% by 2030 compared to 20% in US. So imagine we are thinking of becoming a superpower or thinking of being the most developed nation, but this is one thing that will prove our Achilles heel and won't let us do that. So talking of India, IHD comprised the most important cause for death in men and women, and hemorrhagic stroke and IHD, if you combine together, then all these cancers that you see below this would not be able to match the magnitude of deaths. So it's the most important cause of deaths. 60% of the world deaths in 2010 due to cardiovascular disease were in India. So there's nothing to be proud of this, but this is the statistics that says. Now let's discuss a few trials before we understand the concept of polycap or polypill. Inter-heart study was done again by Salim Yusuf, and he was one of the pioneer of thinking this problem. And he said that as you increase the risk factors, the risk does not double up. Suppose somebody has one risk factor and the other person has 2 risk factors, it doesn't double up. The cumulative risk doesn't double up. There is an exponential rise. So as the risk increases, there is an exponential rise in the cumulative risk. So if there are three risk factors, there is a 9-fold increase, and if the 9 risk factors are there, there is going to be about 26-fold increase in the cumulative risk of that person. So as we pile up the risk factor, the risk, the cumulative risk of developing a heart disease or stroke will increase. Now after age 55, once we reach 55 years of age, so the risk doubles up. As you can see, both for men and women in this slide, as you increase in age, there is more than a chance that somebody will get a heart attack. Now another study, pure study, was again, Salim Yusuf was a pioneer in this study, and this spanned across 5 continents in 17 countries, and almost 1.5 lakh patients were studied in this. It endeavored to explain the influences of society on the treatment adherence of non-communicable diseases. So what are the influence of the community, of the economic influences, of the government influences on the treatment of non-communicable disease? Very noble thoughts and very vast subject of which they covered. And what they found out that even in the, and they took countries like USA and Canada, which were in the high income group, Argentina, Mexico were in the middle income group, and India, Pakistan and Afghanistan in the low income group. So they found out that even if a patient has suffered a stroke or has had a heart attack, almost 70% of the, only 70% of the people, even in the most developed countries like USA, were taking the drugs, the life-saving statins or ACE inhibitors or beta blockers or antiplatelet drugs. And that was in the urban areas. In the rural areas, the things were bad. And in the low-income group countries like India, in rural countries, when a person suffers a heart attack, less than 5% of the patients are actually taking these life-saving drugs. So that explains a lot. That explains a lot about prescribing a drug. That explains a lot about adherence to the therapy, and that also explains the economic consequences of having a drug. So they had controls. Controls are supposed to be healthy individuals which do not have any risk factor, and 99% of the controls in inter-heart study had at least one risk factor. So anybody who is 55 years of age and is a male is actually having 2 risk factors without knowing. Maybe his blood pressure, BP is normal, he's non-diabetic, but the risk factors, they just come like that. And if somebody starts smoking or is taking alcohol a little too much, then of course the risk piles up. And with our busy schedule and with our fast life, sedentary lifestyle just comes handy. So the risk factors, without our knowing, we may be having, and it has been said that anybody who is 60 years of age, he has a risk factor for developing a heart disease or a stroke. We must also remember that the heart attack and stroke doesn't occur in people who have very elevated levels of risk factor, but on average risk factors, who have elevated average risk factors, average level of elevation of risk factors, they develop more heart attacks and strokes rather than people who have very elevated levels of these risk factors. Now, in last 50 years or so, there has been appreciable decline in cardiovascular morbidity and mortality, and that has been attributed to statins, to antiplatelet drugs, and to ACE inhibitors. So therapeutic options are too many, but of course they are not being utilized. So why then we are thinking of having a pill that combines everything and given to patient, and so that we solve our purpose and we reduce the cardiovascular mortality and morbidity. So proven therapy is not being used. Non-adherence, cost and affordability and side effects, as we discussed, are the issue that polypill has come into being. Now let's talk about how can we reduce the risk. If you lower the blood pressure only, the risk of heart attack decreases by about 20 to 25%, and of stroke about 35 to 40%. If you control cholesterol, the risk is almost the same. If you give aspirin, the risk of heart attack is reduced by 30 to 35%, and of stroke 20 to 25%. So if you only are treating just one risk factor, the residual risk remains. So it's important that you treat the entire risk factor gambit of a person rather than treating just one single risk factor. Let's say that there is a 10% decline in the blood pressure and a 10% decline in the total cholesterol. So some people would believe that there will be a 20% decline in the cardiovascular morbidity or mortality. But in fact, that will cause a reduction of 45%. So as we had an exponential rise in the cumulative risk, there is an exponential decline in the cumulative risk once we take care of the all risk factors that are known to us and all risk factors that a person or a patient might be having. So it is important that we are not concerned with just by knowing what the blood pressure is, but there should be a method where we total risk is calculated. There are so many scores which are available that gives you in percentage in next 10 years what are the chances of getting a heart attack or a stroke of that person, and if that risk is too high, that person needs to be treated. That person has to be given the same respect that you give to a person who has had a heart attack or stroke. Now, as we talked about and we talked early in the beginning, Salim Yusuf is a man who's in Canada. He's an Indian, and he thought of this, that if we combine all the drugs that are to be given post-MI or post-stroke and give as a single pill to the person, not only we will decrease the cost of the medication, but will increase the compliance. Consequently, the adherence of the pill would be more, and consequently we can reduce the cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. So this was the concept that he gave in 2002. Simultaneously in England, two doctors, Wald and Law, they proposed that if you give 3 blood pressure lowering pills together, along with a statin and a folic acid, I'm not sure that many of us would believe that folic acid would help a person in reducing the cardiovascular mortality and morbidity, but nonetheless, that was the initial thought that came in their minds. Everybody who's more than 55 years of age, they thought that they can reduce the CAD events by 88% and strokes by 80%. Now, this was something that was out of the blue. That was, kind of a volcanic statement that you make, that you can reduce the number one cause of global morbidity and mortality by 88% or 80%. That was, a very brave statement, very loud statement it was taken to be. But then they had their reasons to tell that. For Salim Yusuf, he said that if you do not do anything, somebody who is 55 years or older, then there is a 2-year event rate of 8% in high-risk individuals. If you give aspirin, there is a relative risk reduction of 25% and event rate falls down to 6%. If you give beta blockers along with, the event rate falls down further to 4.5%. If you give lipid-lowering drugs and ACE inhibitors together, then the cumulative risk reduction is about 75%. So that is how he calculated. This was mathematics, and it was not, his plain hunch or one night he thought of that it could be like this. So he worked on the epidemiological knowledge, and he came with this formula that we can have as much as 75% reduction if a person takes all the drugs that he should take once he is at a high risk or has suffered a event. Similarly, Wald and Law also thought of the same. They also had folic acid in between, and I'm sure that that is a subject in itself. But nonetheless, they said that cumulative combined effect of giving all the drugs together will reduce the cardiovascular mortality and morbidity by a huge margin. Now, they also gave a concept that let's give generic medicines here. Generic medicines are always cheaper. Let's give generic medicine, let's give them at half the dose so that the side effects are less, and also that will reduce the cost. So that was the thought that they came up. And these, the statins, the simvastatin and the beta blockers that they had taken at the dose, they have shown the morbidity and mortality reduction at that dose only. So that means they come up with an idea that if we reduce the dose of these drugs, generic drugs together, maybe the side effects would be lower and the efficacy would increase. All of us know that if you combine two drugs and give it as a fixed dose combination, you may increase the efficacy 5-fold and you decrease the side effects simultaneously. So low dose is needed and higher efficacy is produced. So that was the concept of polypill. Now, if you drug combinations are associated with greatest reduction in all-cause mortality and morbidity, this trial has shown that if you give statins alone, there is a significant reduction in mortality. But if you give aspirin, ACE inhibitor and statins together, the greatest reduction has been seen compared to each drug given alone. So compliance to therapy, now the concept has built up that why polypill was needed and why it was essential to have a pill that combines many virtues of the drugs that are intended to be given to post-MI or post-stroke patients. So how can we increase the compliance? If a person is not taking any drug, he is just taking one additional drug, the compliance is almost 58.8%. That is proportion of days covered that he took the medicine actually. But if you increase the number of drugs, then the compliance falls down. And we are very fond of writing drugs to our patients, many a time placebos, many a times drugs which do not have proven efficacy, but the poor chap might be taking Revital but missing the statins actually. So as the number of drugs they increase, the adherence decreases, and so does the increase in the cardiovascular events, they increase. So almost 1/3 of patients after an event, they discontinue their drugs within a month. So we might be believing that we have done a PTCA or done a CABG to our patient and he might be taking all the drugs, but it has been shown that only 2/3 of these patients are actually taking the drugs and 1/3 have stopped taking the drugs within a month. What is the cause of this, dropping out? Treatment complexity. If you have a regime and a diagnosis that is too tough, the poor patient doesn't take the medications. If you increase the number of pills, of course he doesn't take. Too many conditions. He has uric acid that is elevated. He has hypothyroidism. He has kidney impairment as well. He has prostate impairment as well. So all these problems, along with CAD, of course, he's not going to take all the drugs. And hypertension, because many a times hypertension is you're not able to treat with one drug, you have to combine it with many drugs. That in itself is a factor that increases the non-compliance. Now, it has been seen that if you give two medications simultaneously rather than giving it after some weeks or some days, that increases the compliance. So, whenever you see your patient give all the drugs that you intend to do almost in the beginning rather than waiting for some time and then starting the treatment. Of course, this slide doesn't need an explanation. If somebody is not taking the drugs, of course the cardiovascular events or any events or anything, they are going to increase. For a drug to have its effect, it has to be taken, swallowed, and it should reach the body for it to show the pharmacokinetics and dynamics. So it's very important that the person takes it. So poor adherence is a risk factor, perhaps yes, as we know that ignorance is the biggest risk factor, not diabetes, not blood pressure, not smoking. But ignorance that I am not going to have this disease is the biggest risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Similarly, poor adherence is also a cardiovascular risk factor, and this is in itself that has been tried to be tackled by a pill phenomena, polypill innovation that we are talking about. So compliance ahead, and that compliance is in the form of Polycab. Now this is a brief history, and these are the gentlemen who, in the middle you can see that Salim Yusuf is there. On his left is Prem Payas. Now these are the individuals who really pioneered this concept in India, and Dr. Bhatia talked of first in India. The first trial, the first major trial of polypill was done in India, courtesy Cadila, and this clinical trial was known as TIPS-1, and it was completed and shown to the world. It was published in Lancet. A hot debate followed, but it's still, it's still circulating. People are still working on this. FDA has still not given approval, but let's hope that by 2015 we might get approval. TIPS 2 also done and completed. TIPS 3 is in the process. So overall, a lot of moss which is gathering, and let's see where the stone goes. So it is one capsule, and there are multiple drugs. You might be thinking that it will be a Superman capsule that will be very hard to take, but it's just a normal capsule. And it contains 3 antihypertensive agents: hydrochlorothiazide 12.5, it's not the usual dose; atenolol 50 milligram, not 100, and ramipril 5, not 10, as shown in the HOPE trial. Lipid-lowering drug simvastatin 20, not 40, and one antiplatelet agent. Aspirin, as you know, is almost dose independent from 75 to 300. It works the same. So these are the drugs at almost half the doses. They have been combined, and they are given just as one capsule to the patient. Not only you are giving, you are increasing the adherence of the compliance of the individual, but you are also treating a lot many risk factors in one go. You are treating the individual as a whole and not the risk factor. So, with so many billions of Indians, who can benefit from Polycab? Anybody who had a heart attack or a stroke can take this. There is no problem in secondary prevention. I believe secondary prevention is very clear. It's a low hanging fruit which anybody can jump up and take. So anybody who had a heart attack or stroke, of course, is a candidate for this. And according to Salim Yusuf and according to Walden Law, anybody who is 55 years of age can take this. Now, it's not the recommendation, a guideline, FDA approval, but as the trials are underway, they are evaluating this concept, and if proven right, this might be a true story that anybody who is 55 years of age, after the breakfast, you keep the Polycab pill there and gulp it down with the water, and you have reduced your chances of getting a heart attack or a stroke by 88% or something like that. So large number of people can benefit. So it's very simple. You combine all these drugs together and the Polycab is formed. Not exactly. There was a trial which first tried to mix the, we tried to see the effect of mixing these drugs together. The bioavailability and area under curve of each drug were examined. They tried to find out if you combine all these drugs, whether they behave in the similar manner as they are expected to. And once this trial proved that yes, it was done in Ahmedabad in Cadila laboratories, then they went ahead with this concept. So TIPS-1 was the first trial done by Salim Yusuf in India. There were nine arms of this trial. It was a double-blind randomized trial, 50 centers in India, 45 to 80 years of age. Active treatment was given for 12 weeks and follow-up was for 16 weeks. And they tried to look at the blood pressure, heart rate, lipids, and the platelet aggrability. How active are the platelets, and also the safety and tolerability. The 9 arms were one group they gave only aspirin, another simvastatin, another thiazide. Another group they gave thiazide plus ramipril, then thiazide plus atenolol plus ramipril, then thiazide, ramipril plus atenolol, then thiazide, ramipril, atenolol, and aspirin, and of course Polycap. So these were the patients they made, and they tried to they put them head to head with each other. A fair number of diabetics and women were always ruled out, and they were not given parity even in the Western trials, even in the international trials. But again, as Indians, we are proud that a fair number of women were there in this trial. Now it was shown that once you have 3 BP lowering drugs, the Polycap reduction was even higher, and it reduced the BP even to better than 3 blood pressure lowering drugs. And heart rate reduction was almost equal to the atenolol group, atenolol arms where atenolol was being given, and it was statistically significant. And of course, on LDL cholesterol, the Polycap was equally effective as the simvastatin group, and similar reduction in total cholesterol was seen with Polycap. And antiplatelet efficacy, the aspirin, wherever the aspirin arm was there, the platelet activity, the extent to which they aggregate was similar. It was similarly inhibited with Polycap. So Polycap was, almost as effective as individual drugs given together, and it was safe, and there was no issue with the adverse drug reaction. There were no, nothing like that it cannot be taken due to adverse side effects. A similar side effect, cough, fatigue, dyspepsia, as with the other 9 arms. So, this was 1 week trial, as I said. I remember we were called to Delhi, and Salim Yusuf himself had come, and he talked about this. We all were very excited. Lancet gave an editorial note to this. In fact, there was a Daily Telegraph and New York Times made up frontline stories where they said cheap Indian pill would take care of the heart disease globally. Then, encouraged by this, they went with a TIPS-2 trial. Now they tried to increase the dose of Polycap. Instead of 1, they tried to give 2 Polycaps, and to counteract the effects of hydrochlorothiazide, they also added potassium supplements. So active treatment was given for 8 weeks and follow-up for 12 weeks, and they found that the BP reduction was similar. In fact, with double dose, the BP reduction was even higher, and on LDL cholesterol, the effect was much more than the single drug. And there was, no effect on the heart rate, but it was well tolerated, and there were no issues with the adverse drug reaction. So full dose Polycap reduced BP and low density lipoproteins to a greater extent compared with the low dose, with similar tolerability. So that increased the benefits that might be taken up with this drug. So if you combine these 2 drugs together, then the kind of equation that Walden Law and Salim Yusuf himself had said in the beginning of this concept comes true, and reduction in the morbidity and mortality could reach the figures that they had predicted. So this is the concept. This is a very novel experiment where you are giving a drug not only to increase the compliance of the patient, you are also reducing the cost of the preparation, because most of the drugs that are being included in this are generic. You are decreasing the side effects, because once you give the drugs together at half the doses, the side effects are also decreased. And of course, you are able to treat a large population. In Interheart study, they were so dismayed by the results that they found that Salim Yusuf said that it's a global tragedy that despite having the drugs which are cheap, we are not able to give to the patients who deserve them the most. They went up to the extent of saying that the government should take notice that it would not be if the doctors are not there adequate number, there are no. Polypill is 20 cents, 15 rupees, which is a phenomena as far as the Western standards are concerned. In US, in England, where Polypill is being sold, they are selling it at $1. again, for their country, it's very cheap. So economic benefits and treating the masses is one aspect, and you are able to treat a wide number of people who are at risk, and to a larger impact you will leave. Now, all good things about polypill, but then of course any good concept must have the critics, must have the adversaries who oppose the concept. And the major opposition of this is that we cannot medicalize the prevention. Not every person is the same. You cannot, just global blanket. You cannot give to the entire community for the sake of prevention, because every patient is different. He may need drugs in a different combination, and once you are giving a drug in a fixed combination, you may not be you may not be able to alter the dose or the drug or go for some another drug if the need be. So that is, that is the adversaries that are talking negative about medical polypill. And the major opposition is that FDA approval is still pending. A lot many trials, a lot many combinations are now being tried out. And the proponents of the polypill, like Salim Yusuf, say that you can have multi-drug pills for tuberculosis, for AIDS, for cancers. Then why not for cardiovascular disease, which is the #1 cause for disease globally nowadays? So, the radical about polypill is that you are able to give blanket prevention to a huge community, to a lot many people. Maybe you might not need doctors and just preventive healthcare workers or paramedics to distribute the drug. But I mean, that concept is too far off, and we are not. At least we are not saying that it should be done, but that could be a future possibility, and anybody who has the age on the wrong side can take this drug. So, this, I think all this we have already discussed, and HOPE-3 trial is one trial where we are pinning our hope. It is not using the same combinations of the drug that are done in TIPS 2 or 3. But it's included the drugs which are more modern, like candesartan and rosuvastatin. So more drugs which are more modern and more efficacious are being used, and time remains to be, time will tell whether they are effective, and if they are, then perhaps that be a breakthrough in medical sciences, as innovation in medical sciences, as Dr. Bhatia talked in the beginning. Thank you. I clearly said that time is still not right, that anybody who is 55 years of age or over on the wrong side should start taking this. Now, trials are always being held. You cannot stop trials from being held. There is an ethical approval which is taken prior to any drug that is launched. Had there been no trials, then perhaps today there would have been no statins, no ramipril, and no other drugs that we had, the genetic drug that Dr. Bhatia had talked in the beginning. So it's a concept, it's an innovation that we discuss, that we talk. We are as excited as you are.